Praveen, of course, in the first innings he was unplayable, but Hambultenia, he went to a level like I would say it's like meditating.
Where he mentions Dimuth Karunaratne as a cricketing nerd who's very interested in numbers. He
I would say Ramesh Mendis was really unfortunate that he couldn't pick up a 5 wicket haul.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Around the Wickets on Sri Lanka's number one sport, www.thepapare.com. We are coming to you to chat about everything that is cricket in Sri Lanka, and we are coming to you on a very happy note where Sri Lanka has managed to take a brilliant win against the visiting West Indies down in Galle, and it was a brilliant win for Sri Lanka. And to chat about this, joining with me are two very passionate cricket followers and journalists of ThePapare.com, Sharmeegan, Sridheran, and also Estelle Vasudevan, who was at goal to witness this emphatic victory. Estelle, it was a pleasure to see Sri Lanka back in red ball action after a while, actually. And how do you sum up Sri Lanka's performance against the
Yeah, as you said, it's been quite a while since Sri Lanka played some Test cricket. I think the last series we played was against Bangladesh in May. So a lot of those players like Dimuth Karunaratne, Angelo Matthews, Lasith and Buldenio were coming back after quite a big break, and we hadn't even had some first class cricket in between that time. So I think it was overall a very good performance. Sri Lanka can be pleased with the way things went both with bat and ball. Of course, there are things to be worked on and improved, and I think we should see a better performance in the second test. Having said that, I think, as you mentioned, with the break, despite the break, it was quite an impressive performance from the Sri Lankans.
especially because of the fact that the way in which Sri Lanka managed to dominate West Indies from the get-go. Sri Lanka won the toss and elected to bat first. Sri Lanka putting on 386 runs for the first innings and managing to restrict West Indies to 230. So, Megan, it was a little frustrating initially for Sri Lanka because West Indies' tail seemed to wag and wag and wag for a long, long time, but finally managing to restrict them to 230 runs. And again, in the second innings, I think it was very important the fact that Sri Lanka managed to get into 190 runs in very quick succession. And Angelo Matthews, of course, coming back into national cricket after a long sabbatical. That was good to see Matthews back, isn't it?
Of course, it was always nice to see Matthews in action and in full swing like that because he was playing for a cause and as in course to win the game and they had a clear plan, and he executed it right. Being a comeback match, putting yourself under such pressure and executing it right, it's not easy. And of course, Matthews proved himself. Matthews, he has been a world class player for Sri Lanka for so long, so no wonder that Matthews was able to do that. And of course, very happy for him and for the team.
Yes, Matthews did manage to get 69 runs in that second innings. Incidentally, his number in cricket as well, and also I think more than his run scoring in the first innings, what was very impressive was that diving catch he took in the second innings, diving in front. You could see that he was there, he was involved in the game as well, and he was very eager to try and capitalize on any opportunity that came his way. Estelle, let's talk a little bit more about our batting because I think when we speak about our batting in red ball cricket in the recent times, Dimuth Karunaratne has been an absolute gem of a cricketer for Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka always has been we struggle when it comes to our opening partnership, maybe the white ball game or the red ball game, but Dimuth Karunaratne has stood tall in the red ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, the fact that he's able to just continue from where he left off against Bangladesh, where he got a double century and a century, I think, in that series was so impressive. Of course, two chances in both innings, but he made the most of it. I think what's good about him is that he's able to understand how the pitch is playing early on and adjust the way he plays in those conditions. For example, in the second innings, the ball was turning and Cornwall was getting some good bounce as well with his height. But Karunarat was patient and he was able to kind of settle in that early period, assess what was happening on the track, and then go for some runs. I think at the end of the day, he got 83 runs in pretty quick time as well. So really, really impressive like you said, he's been that one constant at the top of the order. I think Thirimana was also doing well during this year. Unfortunately, misses out on this series due to personal reasons. But yeah, that Dimuth Karunaratne at the top of the order has been excellent for Sri Lanka and has really been the backbone of Sri Lanka's batting in the past couple of years.
Absolutely, I think, and especially there is a very interesting fact, Megan, that you pointed out as well. Dimuth Karunaratne has scored over 4,000 runs since the retirement of Kumar Sangakkara, and that's the most by any batsman for Sri Lanka cricket. And also in this year itself, he scored 854 runs, and we really do hope that he manages to get to that 1,000 mark in the next match if it's possible. Talk a little about Dimuth Karunaratne's contribution at the top for Sri Lanka.
You just mentioned the numbers. That's phenomenal, for a batsman to score for 4,000 runs under 5 years. I mean, just about 5 years time. It's phenomenal feat, and given the fact that Sri Lanka cricket was not performing so well in that time period, Dimuth Karunaratne scoring at 49.6 was absolutely golden for Sri Lanka. I think ST mentioned, he's the only constant that has been there since the retirement of Kumar Sangakkara. Of course, Mayala and Sangha, after the two retired, uh, we just saw people trying to fill in their feet. But I think in Red Bull, silently, Dimuth Karunaratne has been filling those shoes as in to his capacity as an individual cricketer. And what an year this has been for him. Close to 900 runs at 77, and of course he's also a shy away from the most consecutive 50s, I think, in innings. So it's been great. It's been going good for him, and he's also playing for a point, isn't he? Isn't he, Sudarshan? As in being dropped from the white ball team, and of course, several conflicts throughout the recent past. But he still kept his game alive. Still kept his form in the on field as constant, just as how we left it in the Bangladesh series. He's picked up from there and then just still running. So, and that is not easy, and that shows a lot of character, and that shows a lot of mental stability as a cricketer from Dimuth Karunaratne. And I just saw an article where he has mentioned he's eyeing 10,000 runs, and that is also another factor that I was really impressed about. Because in recent past, I didn't see any Sri Lankan cricketers setting themselves targets like that on an international field. It's not about just representing the country and scoring a century or two. It's like I wanting to be the best among the best. So I wish he could get to that elite panel of 10,000 runs cricketers, and he has all the ability for it.
Very interesting points brought forward there, Megan, because I remember very vividly reading an article on Cricinfo about Dimuth Karunaratne, an article written by Andrew Fidel, where he mentions Dimuth Karunaratne as a cricketing nerd who's very interested in numbers. He likes to look at the numbers of the opposition bowlers that he'll be playing. He likes to assess the games with the backing of the numbers. So it's brilliant to see that he has set himself a goal of getting that 10,000 mark, and he will join a very very elite club if he manages to do so. Only Sangakkara and Mahela has been able to get there. Estelle, now all the batting prowess of Sri Lanka, all the batting performances of Sri Lanka would be of to no avail if the bowlers did not back them up. When we talk about the bowlers in this Test match, it was the spin trio of Praveen Jayavikrama, Lasit Tambuldenia and Ramesh Mendis who did all the work. In first innings, it was Praveen Jayavikrama who managed to excel, picking four wickets for 40. And come the second innings, it was Lasit Tambuldenia who picked up 5 wickets. But Ramesh Mendis has been a constant in both the innings as well. He supported them very well with his off spin. What was your take on the spinners?
Yeah, I think initially they were quite patchy. I would say at the beginning of each spell or at the beginning of the day, they found it a bit difficult to find their lengths consistently. So I think that was one of the reasons on day three that the West Indies managed to drag on for so long. And even on day five early on, De Silva and Bonner were able to drag on for a little while because Sri Lanka weren't able to find those lengths consistently. And I think it's understandable because the fact is, uh, Lasit Ambuldenia has not played Test cricket since March, where I think he was injured during a tour to the Caribbean, and both Praveen and Ramesh have only been playing white ball cricket since that time. So it took them a little bit of time. I think Ambudeni was excellent during the second innings, even on day four when he only picked up a couple of wickets to Ramesh Mendis's four. He really got the ball to talk. He got his line right, he got his length right, and I think most importantly, the speed with which he bowled was right. He got into a bit of rhythm in the second innings. I would say Ramesh Mendis was really unfortunate that he couldn't pick up a 5 wicket haul. Um, it would have been his first in his Test career. Two catches went down off his bowling. One, Pathum Nisanka at leg slip, and then Dimuth Karunaratne also dropped a catch at short mid wicket, and also he had an LBW decision overturned. So, really feel for Ramesh. He was not able to get that 5 wicket haul, but overall, I think Sri Lanka will be really pleased because if you look at the experience there, Ambudeni has played 12 games. Praveen Javikrama was in his second game, and Ramesh Mendis in his third. So a very inexperienced bowling lineup. So the Sri Lankan management will be really happy, I think, with the fact that they still managed to get those 20 wickets. I think Lakmal got 1 wicket in the first innings. Apart from that, it was all about the spinners. I think it's all about kind of adjusting to the conditions, adjusting to the roles you have to play. With three spinners, you always have that luxury of kind of giving one guy a little bit of a rest while the other two bowled in tandem, or even when Dhananjay Silva came on to bowl. I think overall Sri Lanka will be happy, but of course there are things to work on, like I mentioned, the consistency, getting those lines and lengths right. And PL Vijayatunga, the spin bowling coach, also spoke about that during one of the press conferences during the game about getting those lines and lengths right consistently. That's where you can create some pressure for the batsman. So still a lot to work on, but Sri Lanka will be happy with how they were able to get things together in that.
Yes, at the end of the third day, spin bowling coach P.R. Vijayatunga did mention that these three are very young spinners, and the fault that they had was they were trying to take wickets. They were trying too many deliveries to take wickets, and they messed up the lines as well. Sharmeegan, looking at these spinners, they're very young, they're inexperienced, but they're performing at a level that we expect them to perform in international cricket. Very interesting times for Sri Lanka cricket in the future.
Of course, that's what the take out of this test match is. They're very young, and the way they performed was like after Angane Hera, Sri Lanka has been a little bit rusty with their spinners until we found the Ambudeni. Ambudeni has proved his course, and of course, but he has been on and off on the field with injuries and all that. But right now, it feels like they have a combo. And, having two left arm spinners is a gem, and of course, an offie on Ramesh Mendis like that. So we are able to play two left arm spinners in a match and still win a game. So playing one batsman short. So this shows that how much the batting complemented the bowling. Because we've been struggling in that front. We played one batsman short and we still were able to score heaps and heaps of runs. So I think that was also a positive to take. And then after that, the way Ambudeni and Praveen bowled. Praveen, of course, in the first innings he was unplayable, but Ambudeni he went to a level like I would say it's like meditating. He went to this own rhythm in the second innings. The way he bowled, the way he dropped the one just on line and spun it away from Joshua Da Silva. That was literally an unplayable delivery which Joshua got off. That those kind of bowling. He consistently hit that line just like how ST mentioned. Though he struggled in the first innings and of course in the start of the second innings, he got into that rhythm later on in the game. He's like he was in a meditating phase. He was just bowling there, running bowling there, bowling there. It's in the right place and just the same spot again and again. And so was the same with Ramesh Mendis. And also it was impressive how Ramesh Mendis bowled with the new ball in the second innings. So it's great takes on sprint front for Sri Lanka. And I think if we keep working like this, Sri Lanka's test team is still safe.
Brilliant. Now, talking about the Sri Lankan Test team, this was incidentally the first game Sri Lanka played in the 2021-2023 World Test Championship. And Sri Lanka, with that victory, is right on top of the table of the World Test Championship, managing to get 12 points off that game because we won it outright. And Estelle, it's something that we need to be very mindful of, isn't it? Every Test match matters. in the run up to the World Test Championship final in 2023. How important is every Test match, and uh, what would this win give to Sri Lanka in terms of confidence going into the World Test Championship?
Yeah, every test match matters, and I think what's most important is that Sri Lanka really capitalize on the games at home. I think that's something that we struggled with in the previous cycle where we lost to teams like New Zealand and England at home. So this time around, I think even Dimuth Karunaratne mentioned it. We need to make sure that at home we really get as many points as we can, and then if we can get a few wins here and there overseas, then we should be amongst those top teams in the World Test Championship. Next up, we've got India after the second test uh, versus West Indies is completed. India, of course, next year, so that's going to be a big challenge. So that's where Sri Lanka will need to work on things. They need to make sure they go into that series already with a 100% record, having beaten West Indies, so that there we have a little bit of room where even if we manage to, get some positive results in a couple of games, we're still in a good position overall.
Absolutely, Estelle. And before we go into India now, the second Test match will commence on Monday. Megan, do you see any changes coming into the second game? Will there be any changes that the coach will be tempted to do after the win in the first game?
Personally, I don't think any change should be done because after a win like that, I don't think they should change the team. But we did see that the fast bowlers were really idling. But you can't just drop a fast bowler like that after one game, and especially someone like Suranga Lakmal, while Dushman Shamira is going all guns blazing. So I think this team should not be changed, and I don't think there'll be any change either. But there could be more utilizing for the fast bowlers, is what I think.
Estelle, any
In
changes that you might have in mind? Yes, you're very eager. Any changes that you'll have in mind?
Yeah, I think there will be one change. I think Sri Lanka will bring in the extra batsman and leave out either Dushmantha Chamira or Suranga Lakmal. I think Chamira will be the one to sit out because uh, we didn't see we didn't see the need for two fast bowlers in the first game. I think the reason why two fast bowlers were played was the fact that Gaul had seen a lot of rain. So I think the management kind of had this thought or doubt whether there will be some assistance for the fast bowlers. And if we were bowling first, then that would be vital to have two guys who can move the ball a little bit and Chamira to kind of unsettle the West Indies batsman. But having seen how this game went, I really think that there's a big chance that Sri Lanka will bring in Asalanka and leave out Chamira just to strengthen that batting lineup. Because if you look at Sri Lanka's batting, it's depended very heavily on Dimuth Karunaratne making runs in this first game. So they would want that extra bit of cushion somewhere. I don't know where Charith Asalanka will fit in actually because the top five is basically settled. So he might have to bat out of position lower down in the order. But definitely, I think there will be a consideration for bringing in that extra batsman with the way that Sri Lanka has kind of been a bit suspect against the spin bowlers in the recent past.
Well,
Well,
interesting
adding on
thoughts
to it,
there.
do you still think, adding on to it, Sudarshan, do you still think Oshita Fernando is going to get another game? You were there at the ground also. Yes. Do you think Oshita Fernando is going to get another game? If in place, Charith Asalanka is playing, I think he should play at that spot at number three.
Well, how fair is it going to be, Megan? Now, before we go to SK, how fair is it going to be? I mean, Oshada Fernando again. He's playing red ball cricket after a long, long, long time. Yes, he wasn't impressive, but he needs some consistent playing time as well. Estelle, what are your thoughts?
No, I think he'll get another opportunity. I think what we've seen in this year in the test batting lineup is a little bit of consistency in terms of batting position. So we've seen, of course, Dimuth Karunaratne opening alongside Lahiru Thirumana in the past. Then you've had Oshada at 3, Matthews at 4, Dhananjay De Silva at 5, and the other options coming in at 6 or 7, depending on who's keeping wickets. So I think Oshada Fernando, he hasn't really been in terrible form. I wouldn't say he hasn't got any big runs, but earlier in the year, he did get a few good knocks in. I think it's a lot about confidence also when it comes to him. He's uh, been affected, I think, heavily by the fact that had to switch between the formats and hasn't been able to adjust to that. But I think that consistency is something that they need to give the players. And I think Oshida will get another opportunity at three. Asalanka, if he's fitting in, will probably fit lower down in the order. It remains to be seen if it will be at five, six, or seven. But yeah, definitely Oshida should be, in my opinion, should be given another go. It's one game after 6 months without any first class cricket. So, yeah.
Well, that was about the Test series currently happening in Galle, and Sri Lanka managing to win the first one, of course. But another Sri Lanka team is playing international cricket. Sri Lanka women's team is currently taking part in the ICC Women's World Cup 2021 qualifiers. The Women's World Cup is scheduled to be held in New Zealand in 2022, and Sri Lanka managed to win their opening game against Netherlands by 34 runs in on DLS method. Estelle, your thoughts about this opening game, Sri Lanka's talisman, if you can call her, Chamari Atapattu was absolutely terrific in the game, and she was in terrific form coming off from the Big Bash League, and she showed why she is one of the leading batters in world cricket.
Yeah, I think it was a very impressive win for Sri Lanka, particularly the way Chamariyatapattu batted in that game looked very easy. And I think she definitely had the chance to go for a double hundred the way she was batting, because I think she had close to 100 runs by the 20th over. Um, but Sri Lanka will still be a little bit wary. They were playing their first international team in I don't know how long, since March 2020. There was a bit of rust. I think we struggled with the ball early on to get some breakthroughs. After that first wicket fell for the Netherlands, but fortunately were able to tighten things up in the middle. Netherlands, of course, I think if you consider Sri Lanka's group that has West Indies, Ireland, Netherlands, and Sri Lanka, probably the weakest out of the four teams. So Sri Lanka really needed to get a win in that game. Now they will need to see how they match up against I would say the favorites, West Indies. They will need, I think, to really concentrate on getting some runs from someone other than Chamari Atapattu, because you never know if Chamari is dismissed early, Sri Lanka are really going to struggle, because even in the game against the Netherlands, we saw in the last 10 overs, I think there were maybe two boundaries or three boundaries maximum. So all the heavy run scoring was done early on in that innings, and Sri Lanka really struggled during the latter half. That will be one big concern. Difficult really to assess uh, or to predict what will happen, because as I mentioned, Sri Lanka haven't played cricket in so long. Of course, the next game will have ODI status because they'll be playing the West Indies. So they'll want to make a big mark there. Another problem being that the squad has been hit with COVID. A couple of players will be missing out. Vice captain Harshita Samaravikrama, I think one of the most important players in that batting lineup, will not be in the starting team against the West Indies. So that's a massive blow. Also, Vishmi Rajpaksha, the 16-year-old who made waves in domestic cricket, becoming the youngest to score a century um, in women's cricket in Sri Lanka. So few challenges, I would say, but uh, we definitely would want, or Hashan Tilakaratne, the coach, would definitely want some runs from someone other than Chamari Atapattu, so that we can really, build that backup in case she is dismissed early, because finishing in the top three of this group and then in the Super Six round will be a priority. If not, Sri Lanka will miss out on that World Cup next year, and they really don't want that to happen.
Yes, it's going to be very, very important for Sri Lanka to try and qualify for the World Cup as well, because the women's cricket in Sri Lanka will rely a lot on Sri Lanka competing in the World Cup. And like Estelle mentioned, Sri Lanka were handed a handicap before the tournament, the qualifier started, with some of the players contracting COVID-19. Estelle, do you think the players who contracted COVID-19, some of them were definite starters? How would that have affected the Sri Lankan team's composition going into the tournament?
I think officially what we know is that Bishmi Rajpaksha and Harshita Samaravikrama are the ones who have been replaced in the squad. We don't know the names. As far as I know, there are four who have contracted COVID. We don't know the other two names. But Harshita was a definite starter. She would have batted at number 3 for Sri Lanka. So the batting gets a little bit thinner. It was already a bit shaky. Um, so it gets a little bit thinner with her gone. Um, the replacements, Anushka Sanjeevani has a bit of experience. She's played in world tournaments in the past as well and did get runs in that game against the Netherlands. Tarika Sewan, the left arm pace bowler, also has come into the squad. She's got only one game under her name, uh, one international game under her name, so there's a bit of inexperience there. But Harshita's absence will be massive loss for Sri Lanka in that batting order, particularly because she has the ability to kind of bat through and is very much a touch player. So is able to use conditions like we saw in Zimbabwe to her advantage. So that'll be a massive loss. But I think uh, players like Hasini Pereira opening the batting, she's been there for a while. Nilakshi De Silva has showed some form in the recent past, all rounder. Those are the people Sri Lanka will be looking at to get some runs because looking at the squad, it is an experienced squad. It's only that they haven't had any match practice at all over the last a year and a half. So it'll be a loss, Harshita definitely, but we have to find a way to deal with it because there's no chance now.
There you go. That's the update from the Women's World Cup qualifiers, of which we will be bringing you constant updates of. Make sure that you log on to www.thepapare.com, where you will be able to find everything about cricket in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, Estelle and Sharmeegan, for joining us for this chat, and we hope to see you next week as well to chat about Sri Lankan cricket. There you go. With that, we come to the close of Around the Wickets for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. And do comment on what you would like us to chat about in the next episode. Until next time, I'm Sudarshan Apiri signing off for the Papare.
Stay on the ball with the Papare Sports News Alerts. Don't miss out on what's happening in the world of sport. Type sports and send to 678 to register. 30 rupees per month. Conditions apply.